Broadcasting live from the Greater Perimeter, it's time for Greater Perimeter Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
This episode of Greater Perimeter Business Radio is brought to you by Mirability, with their new compliance XO service taking you from IT risk to IT reward. Now here's your host, Erik Boemanns.
I was recently reading about a small drink manufacturer whose bottling vendor made a mistake. After shipping the cans now sitting in a warehouse, the cans began to explode. They lost $1.5 million in inventory. They had $500,000 in insurance, plus some supplemental policies. It was nowhere near enough to cover their loss. So a large company might have shrugged this off, but a company that was just starting, it was devastating and almost ended them. That's easy to comprehend, that idea of a real-world loss where there's product. But when we shift gears to cyber, it gets a little bit more abstract. It's a little bit harder to understand. $1 million of coverage sounds like a lot. So my guests today, Craig and Ralph of Tech Collective, help translate this very real risk that cyber does bring to our business into real-world examples. For example, they shared with me an example of a concrete company that initially was hesitant to have any insurance at all, got hit by a ransom attack, was basically out of commission for almost 6 months just due to that. So maybe Craig or Ralph, do you want to expand a little bit on that story on what happened?
Sure. Selling cyber insurance, Erik, as I did for 15 years, one of the actually early adapters to cyber insurance here in Atlanta. So it was a hard sell at first, and several of my companies, mid-size or small size, just said, hey, we don't need it. And as you indicated, one of the stories was one of my concrete companies that we insured. And they were, I actually had two. One was a concrete company that was down for quite a bit, and the other was another large company that paid us a lot of money for premiums for their insurance policies. But when I offered them a cyber policy, they said, well, we really don't need that. We're a construction company. And as you know, 3 months later, they got a major attack. It was a malware attack, ransom attack. And the owner called me and said, hey, we have blue screens here. We don't, what is a Bitcoin? They want $25,000. And I said, well, I'll show you how to get Bitcoin. But if you had bought a $1 million policy, which at the time was, 15 years ago was kind of radical. People like, wow, that's a lot of money, like you indicated.
Yeah.
I said, you would have spent $3,000 on the policy, and it would have covered the $25,000 fine and the ransom and all that fun stuff. So, but it's, it's just nowadays it's not as hard to sell, but with the small businesses, it still is. It's amazing that only 40% of small businesses actually have cyber insurance policies, which is crazy. So,
yeah. So I know we dove right into a story, so maybe we take a step back. Love to hear a little bit about your own backgrounds and the Tech Collective, what it does.
Right. Well, about 1.5 years ago, I joined the Tech Collective from a previous job. I was with I did cyber insurance for 15 years and decided to jump into it full time and to kind of help. We created something new, Craig and I and Jim, called the CARE Report, and it basically benchmarks companies and lets them know what their exposure looks like, what their risk looks like, and then they can adjust their insurance policies and their security as needed. So it was something that was really, really needed. For many, many years, I just said, there's something missing here. And we can dive into that a little bit more. But, Craig and I and Jim came up with something. And 7 months ago, we launched the website for care-report.com. And in the last 7 months, the growth has been incredible. And we've been blessed. So, and I'll let my CEO here speak. Go ahead.
And I'm Craig. So the Tech Collective, we are technology-focused service providers, and we help businesses with tailored IT needs, whether it be cyber insurance assessments, it could be strategic advisements, cybersecurity, or just your basic infrastructure. But we've got two different divisions of our platform. And as Ralph was mentioning, Our latest and greatest growth is the CARE report, really helping identify both cybersecurity risks and also the cyber insurance side of the house, making sure that you have the correct policies being put in place for protection.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so you began offering the CARE report, you said 7 months ago?
We launched the website, yes, on August 5th, I believe it was, of last year. And since then, well, I don't know how many, we've done a lot of interviews, a lot of podcasts. We've spoken at so many events. And as you know, Eric, we did the Secret Service launch, the Secret Service cyber event here in Atlanta back in June, and that was at the Mercedes-Benz Conference Center. And that was just quite an honor to do that, especially when we were less than a year old. So
yeah,
it's been quite a ride.
It is, absolutely. So I'm curious if, what prompted you to launch the CARE report? Was it stories like the one with the construction company or other companies that maybe had gaps in their cybersecurity?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I think the story is, I met Ralph some years back, and we had similar conversations from different spectrums of the conversation, and the conversation was really broken. CEOs, COOs, CFOs, CISOs all speak a different language, and we were looking at cybersecurity on one side. Ralph was mentioning the insurance and lack of from the cyber insurance, and we said we've got to connect those two and be a conduit for that program. So we figured we would solve something. We don't like to stand still. So being part of the environment we wanted to come up with a program that would really benefit somebody. I've sat in the C-level seat and know the importance of that. And best effort isn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's hard to make an impact when you're selling insurance, when you're presenting and writing insurance. But from a consultation point of view that I'm doing now, that we're doing now, when we go in and you speak with the CFO, and every single time their insurance is wrong with cyber insurance. When I ask a CFO, why do you have a $5 million limit? And they say, well, because we need to be in compliance. And I say, with what? With the contract.
Yeah.
Every single time, Eric, that is their answer. And I said, well, look, if your building is worth $500 million, why would you insure it for $100 million? This because to be in compliance with what? The homeowners association or whatever, So when we took a deeper dive into that and we did an analysis and actually, I would do a whiteboard and say, look, the thing that's going to hurt you the most is downtime, right? So if you get hacked and you're down for 30 days, what does that cost?
Right.
And the CFO would look at me like I'm crazy, saying, why would we be down for 30 days? And I said, well, we'd pay this and we'd get back up and running. I said, no, you don't get it. And there's so many, as you know, there's so many more costs involved, and so when we run the report for them today and the analytics and all the algorithms that we have with 3 major partners that we have, and the numbers come back, the benchmarking is right spot on. And it always takes them by surprise, but they realize now, look, we have a $10 million policy. We really need 30. That's a big gap.
Well, the other gap that we fulfill, it's, as I was saying before, everybody has a different definition of compliance.
Right.
CFOs are looking at their contract saying, I'm in compliance with the contract needs. Well, that's only one slice of the pie. And now we talk to CISOs and CIOs, and they bring in like healthcare, talking about HIPAA or PCI requirements. Are those also being addressed and covered? And we bring that into the benchmarking and the risk quantification and measure those against really what they need. So again, that brings up a different conversation and fulfillment.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting too. You're talking about compliance with a customer contract. The customer put that in there because if something bad happens, that might be what they're expecting to get from you, which if that's all your policy is, then what's left over for you and getting back up and running. So I think
it's kind of reverse third-party damages, right?
Yeah.
So, and I also insist that when people write their insurance, that they do a check on their suppliers and their clients, right, for third-party damages, but to make sure that they have enough insurance in case something happens. So,
yeah,
it's a big step.
Absolutely. So I am curious, what does the care report help with? How does that actually help a business understand where they're at with those gaps that we've been talking about?
Well, like Craig mentioned, we do analysis on both sides. Mm-hmm. We do the cyber analysis for liability. So we do a risk quantification when it comes to financial. How is it going to hurt? Yep. And we benchmark you. And then on the security side, we also do a benchmark saying, look, if all of your peers have XYZ for security and you're deficient in that, why is that? We need to bring you up to current standards. And Craig can talk about this a little bit, but, we speak to so many CISOs too, and a lot of them are locked in to their environment, and they live in a bubble. So they really don't know what a lot of the outside threats are. And that's the outside look that we take. You can expound on that.
You have a broad lens, and that's why we partnered with 3 different groups that feed us information and vice versa. And it's a broader lens from risk mitigation, taking a look at what they have from an outside-in type of exposure that they might not even be privy to. And we also look at industry like for like. What are your peers doing? What are their exposures? And I think the largest part is really looking at some of the history and the new things that are coming up. We also partner with different agencies that feed us information. We find that many companies are ill-prepared for their incident response. What do you do? It's not a matter of if you're going to get hit. It's really when.
Yeah. So makes sense. Some analysis and benchmarking. I'm curious, maybe if some success stories that you've had where people having gone through the care report, realize that they have the gap, they got that coverage, and then kind of where did that go for them?
Yeah. We have several. One is a manufacturer, large manufacturer. Actually, we have one in Detroit, but there's one in Atlanta too that we dealt with. And when we went in, they had a $3 million policy, and they're doing about $600 million in revenue per year. And I couldn't believe that the numbers were so low. And I said, well, why? Again, it was a contract. After we got through with them, they had a $15 million cyber policy from their broker, and we work with the broker. That's another thing. We don't sell insurance. We're friendly. We're consultation only, and dealing with not only the client but their insurance broker and their security people. They're MSPs. We're a friend to them because we are now validating what they need, right? And from a different perspective, totally. We're an outsider. But it seemed to have more value when it comes from us than from their insurance broker, right?
Sure.
They said to the insurance broker, yeah, you're just trying to sell me more insurance. And I used to hear that all the time. And I'm not. My job as an insurance guy is to keep you in business. When the proverbial, when the crap hits the fan and it costs $10 million and you only have a $3 million policy, who's to blame, right? And I always say that to CFOs. Whose fault is it? If you're wrong, is it my fault or is it your fault? And we don't want to play that game. We want to just look, here's what you need. It's your choice whether you go that route or not, right? But this is what you need. So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So. Well, and I think you brought earlier, like the idea that if you underinsure a property because it's what the HOA requires, right? I wonder too if a lot of people maybe don't understand the risk and or the value that they really should be insuring, right? It's easy to say, oh, they have $3 million of coverage, great. But to your point, if it's a $300 million business, are they even thinking about that problem the right way?
Well, the extra risk tiles that are included in our report, I think accentuate that. And I think that exposes some of the needs that they might not even look at and saying, oh, I didn't even think of this. And we've been in business for X amount of years. So that extra benefit, and again, to reframe, we work for the client. So we're that extra arm or extension of the client. And I think that's the largest value that the client receives.
Yeah. I'm curious how many people come to you thinking that they're going to save money on their cybersecurity insurance after
they can. Report. They actually can because we, like Craig always talks about, we go back to the beginning where the applications, who filled out the cyber applications in order to get the insurance, right? So maybe that was filled out wrong. If we go back and we fill that out properly, right, it can reflect a better premium on your insurance. And we've had that happen a couple of times.
We had a university that was putting in the CMMC and some of the other security benefits. They didn't list anything on their application, and they saw their premium kind of just rising. And it wasn't, dramatically, but we looked at the application. We were doing the cure, and part of that benchmarking was missing some of those gaps. We said, why aren't you identifying that? Let's make it part of the roadmap. And when they return that application, and we really like to call it oven ready or fully baked, the underwriter gave them additional considerations, and they lowered the premium, and actually they were able to gain excess liability limits for next to nothing.
Okay.
So it really benefited the program.
So company can find out not only are they underinsured and maybe need to change the coverage, but also, like you just said, that they're incorrectly covered or at a higher premium than they should have been. So the net can be a positive.
Absolutely. And we worked, and their insurance agent really appreciated the extra guidance that we provided from that report.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is what you mentioned, insurance brokers, a lot of them, and God, I'm going to say over 95% of them don't have the expertise when it comes to cyber insurance. And the good thing is we hold their hand on that application process. So we review those applications. And this is what differentiates us from a lot of people that are writing insurance and pushing these programs. We look at those applications. We help them fill it out properly. We're looking at the previous policies, what they had in place. We're scrubbing that. Where are the gaps? Where are the exclusions? Where are your deficiencies in the policy? You may have I always say to you might have a really good policy, but you're with the wrong carrier.
Sure.
You shouldn't be with that carrier for what you do. So this, again, the consultation version or application, what we provide, we're not looking to switch things around, but if it's broken and it needs to be amended, you have to do it. So,
yep. And as you talk about the cybersecurity insurance applications, I've helped my employers and companies and clients with that as well. And every year there's a new page because the threats keep changing, and the insurance providers keep realizing, you should have had this in place, and we wouldn't have had to pay out a claim. And so they push that back into the requirements, right? So that's an evolving. The products themselves are evolving. I'm curious if you see any other emerging trends in cybersecurity insurance.
Absolutely. So the level of security needed now in order to get a cyber insurance policy has been upgraded quite a bit. Years ago, they didn't even talk about MFA, multi-factor. And now the actual applications that you have to fill out are 10 to 15 pages long. There's now a malware application that you have to fill out, a ransomware application, 2-factor. So there's like 4 applications that you need to fill out now in order to get cyber insurance. And that's good because for a long time, the insurance carriers were way behind when it came to security, what's needed. But I think after they get, so many losses over the year, they've finally stepped up. And we're seeing a lot of that, Craig.
Absolutely. I think the best part of what we're providing, and Eric, especially for your type of services as well, I think it's a conduit for IT strategy roadmap. And I think that builds a stronger roadmap. And it also makes the CFO find it's more economically reasonable to find out what their strategy is going to be for not just short term, but long term. And they might be able to add that benefit of growth or some other productive things that they can add into their offerings.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So you mentioned MFA and multi-factor authentication, right? The whole I need to have my cell phone and my password to log in concept, right? I kind of correlate that with, on the car safety side, if I have, airbags are required now, but if I have collision avoidance or if I have an alarm system, my car insurance premiums go down too because now my car is safer or the claims that may be lower. So are there things besides MFA, which is now a requirement to get insurance effectively, are there other things that companies should be thinking about doing to help lower their risk, and that then translates to, perhaps?
We also work with third parties, and for training, I can't tell you how important training is and awareness. We had somebody years ago, I was part of a fintech company, and we were doing training. We finished our quarterly training, and we were about to release a product. Excuse me. Our CTO was moving very quickly, and you were talking about MFA and phishing attacks and things like that. We were doing request for approvals, and he actually clicked on something he should not have. And unbeknownst to him, got into that trap, reported it very quickly. We got our counsel involved, and we called a town hall meeting, and it was actually fun. He said somebody clicked on something that they should not have clicked on. And everybody's looking in the audience, looking around, and goes, it was me. So being a little humble, he explained what that was. And he said, if I had just followed our training principles over and over and over, we could have avoided that one error. And they got through it. But still, I think training is also a key part.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, that brings up a point. One of my clients years ago, and we talked about security, but you can have the greatest security in the world, but if it's like your house, you lock all the windows, but you leave the front door wide open, right? And I'm going to use some acronyms, but people love it when I do that. But BEC is business email compromise, and that's something everyone should know about. And the reason why is that leads to so many other things. When the criminal is in your network, or the average right now is almost 200 days before you figure out they're in there, right? They've done so much damage, and then when they leave, they always shut the door, and they always, give you a nice, malware ransom attack, Yeah. But the thing that leads to that I wanted to talk about that happened to one of our clients is invoice manipulation. And that's a big component right now of cybercrime. And for those of you listening that don't know what that is, when the criminal is in your email system, he controls a lot of things, inbound, outbound, and they take an invoice that's an actual invoice to one of your clients, and they change the routing instructions. What happens after that is your money goes not to your client, or the client's money doesn't go to you, but it goes to a third party, and it's a crime, right? But a lot of times people don't pick up on that, and if they do pick up on it, when they return the email and say, hey, Eric, I noticed you changed your routing instructions. Well, guess what? Eric responds to you, but it's not Eric.
Yep.
It's the criminal. And he said, yes, we did change the routing instructions. Glad you noticed that. Pay us the money. So I had that happen to one of our clients. It was a $600,000 payment. And 30 days later, they invoiced him for another payment, and another $600,000 went out. And the client realized that after 45 days, said, "Hey, Eric, you haven't paid us." And Eric said, "Yeah, I paid you both. Both those invoices I paid."
Right.
And the money was gone.
I guess the question is Alice listening?
Yes.
So.
Yeah. I had very similar where a client, their email got compromised. So everybody on their contact list got emailed, including me. And it was one of those, it was a fake invoice. Had I clicked on it, I also would have been compromised, and they would have perpetuated. But I replied back and said, hey, I think your account's compromised. Well, the hacker had control of her account. And so immediately I got back, no, it's not compromised. Everything's fine here.
Yeah.
And it was
wonderful.
Yeah. So fortunately, I then called their IT department and said, you need to go check this out. But if they had used slightly different language, and if I hadn't been paying a little bit more attention, I would have believed the email that came back.
Bad actors are definitely improving every day.
Exactly.
It's big business.
Yep.
Huge business. And now with AI, I mean, this is who knows where we're going, right? It's going to get tougher. Yeah.
The little language issues. We had another one where a person was impersonating a new vendor, saying, look at the email thread. This already got approved by your vice president to pay. The mistake they made, though, was they were sending it to a Canadian office, and they talked about U.S. IRS forms. The new ChatGPT would have probably known better and written that email slightly more believable.
Right.
So, yeah.
Beware.
Yep. Anything else from a best practices that people should be thinking about?
Looking and tracking, I think, as companies are streamlining some of their finances and allowing people to bring in their own devices, it's another method. You want to make sure that you can wipe those devices remotely. You want to practice that event. You want to have a plan put in place. That's another low-hanging fruit that people really should pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. And I would say we've been engaging with so many CISOs lately. We've spoken at many CISO groups and organizations. There's a great article that I posted the other day, And this is referring to the insurance portion of what we do.
Yeah.
And it's who should be in the room when you're buying cyber insurance. And now it talks about the CFO and the CISO. For years, I never saw a CISO for years, 15 years. And now they're really encouraging that both of those people need to communicate and need to be in the room just alone for the quantification for the risk.
Yep.
The CISO's aware of that, but the CFO has his head in the sand. He's trying to make money for the company. That's his job. And not to cross over the line and find out, exactly what the threats are, which he should, though,
right,
because it is his job. So that's my recommendation too. Have better communication, the CISO and the CFO. Bring that together.
Absolutely, yeah. So I know we've only just barely skimmed the surface of a very deep topic, but I want to make sure too that we've had a chance to, anything else about the Tech Collective or the Care Report that you want to make sure you have
Do we have another 2 hours?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think somebody always asked me, when do we get engaged? Today.
Right.
There is no right time. Today is the right time to get engaged. You don't need to take a look at renewals.
Yeah.
Look at things today. Just like bringing in a virtual CISO, when is the right time?
Yeah.
Today. Get started.
That's a great point, Craig. We were dealing with the university and they were like, well, our renewal is in September, so we'll increase our limits then in September. I said, what? If there's a firestorm going on in the neighborhood, it's best to put in sprinklers now,
Yeah.
So, don't wait. That's and we're not making more revenue on that. And we're not selling the insurance, but you know what? Don't wait. Protect yourself. We always say, what if you're wrong?
Exactly.
So.
We tell people, I'd rather you sleep well at night knowing that we can help you rather than what if you're wrong and not know.
Yeah. Right. So if today is the right day to engage, how do they reach out to you? How do they find more information?
Well, we've got a website you can visit. It's a very friendly website. It entails everything that we can benefit from or the client can benefit from. It's called care-report.com. And it has our contact information out there. You can put your contact information out there. We'll have somebody return phone call, and conversations are complimentary. There's no charge for talking and discussing.
Right. And I know we've hit on a lot of great nuggets for people to think about, to digest, but maybe what is that one thing that you want to make sure people take home today?
Let's call Craig.
Right. Start today.
Exactly.
Let's start the conversation.
You know what? Just don't gamble. I posted something the other day and I said, don't gamble. And if you're not sure about anything, double check, ask an expert. I don't do my own finances. I leave that to my money manager, because I was investing in things that didn't make any sense. So don't gamble, trust an expert.
Yeah. The risk is real, right?
Yes, it is.
Very much so.
Yeah. Hey, well, Ralph, Craig, I appreciate you coming out today. Thanks for sharing about the Care Report, the Tech Collective, and kind of giving us all something to maybe not sleep as well tonight, but once we talk to you, sleep better tomorrow.
Thanks, Eric.
Love it. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Eric.